Hi, wonderful Rights for Women listeners. I'm Rachael Johns, Australian author of rural romance and women's fiction. My latest book is Outback Secrets, which released a few weeks ago. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to be taking over Pamela Cook's Convo Couch to talk to one of my all-time favourite authors. I'm honoured, excited, completely starstruck, and I don't usually get very nervous, but I am nervous tonight. Before we came on, Elin posted on Instagram that she was just chatting, and I was sitting on the couch next to my son watching some Suits that were going through old stuff, and I saw your post. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be on there now. So anyway, I'm here now. It's all the right time. And thank you, Elin, for getting up at well, you're an early riser anyway, aren't you?
I am an early riser anyway, which is why I thought this might be the best time for me. Yes. So not a worry.
So yes, it's 6:30 in the morning where Elin is, and it's 7:30 at night where I am. So we had to do the maths to make sure that worked out okay. I'll just tell you a little bit about Elin, although I'm sure most of you know who she is. Elin is a New York Times bestselling author. I hope I've done this right. 29 novels, is that correct?
27 novels, 28 on the way. It's very confusing. We can talk about that.
Very bad at maths, obviously.
No.
Really, I can't count. Anyway, that's still amazing, including her debut, The Beach Club. My faves, which is it's hard to choose, but Perfect Couple, I think. My agent actually told me about this novel when I was in America quite a few years ago, and she said, you must read this book. It's absolutely great. It's got a bit of mystery in it, bit of romance, a bit of just family drama, and I fell in love with you through this book. And I've been trying to read my way through your backlist ever since, and always keeping up with the front list. So another one is, sorry, that's the recent one, 28 Summers. I have to say, I am quite hard and I never cry in books. This is only the second book in my life I think I've cried in, and I recommend it to everyone. I just loved it so much. And so we've got so many things I could ask you, but I'll just keep going for a moment to say your most recent one, The Golden Girl, which I also loved. I was very annoyed because in Australia I ordered it online and it took weeks and I was getting very cranky. But anyway, I finally read it and absolutely loved it too. Now, Elin lives on Nantucket Island, which, oh my goodness, since reading her books, I'm desperate to go there. It just sounds absolutely like your idyllic lifestyle. And I'm able to leave WA because I'm not allowed to leave at the moment. I don't know if you know much about the Australian borders at the moment, Elin, do you?
At the moment, I don't, although I have spent a lot of time in WA, but no, you guys are stuck there, huh?
Pretty much WA, we've become, well, I heard someone in America joking that we're a penal colony down south again, but the rest of Australia are opening kind of up. But yeah, we're not allowed to leave. Well, we can leave, but we can't come back. So hopefully that changes very soon. In addition to being a fabulous novelist, Elin is a mum of 3, a runner, which I'm also interested in, a foodie, and a Peloton rider. Is that how you say it? Peloton?
Yes.
Because it's only, tell us.
It's a stationary bike. It must not have made its way to Australia yet.
It's
the most fabulous stationary bike. And it has an interactive screen and you pick your instructor and the length of time and then the kind of music you want to listen to. And that's really what I like about it. So I do rock and roll.
I love it. Oh, well, I have actually, because of you, I signed up to Peloton in Australia, and so I get their emails, and there's a Black Friday special on at the moment, and I'm very close to treating myself because it sounds amazing. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you a little bit. Also, firstly, thank you, because I think I'm so starstruck. I haven't, officially said thank you for taking the time to come on Rights for Women.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I love that you have spent a lot of time in Australia, and I hope maybe one day we'll get you back here for some sort of book tour.
Oh my gosh, that would be a dream. Yeah, so I'll just start. I mean, I'm happy to start by saying one of the reasons why I was so excited to do this is because I first went to Australia in 1995. My then boyfriend, who then became my husband, who is now my ex-husband, although we're still very good friends, but we've run through that. So anytime I'm talking about Australia, I was with either my boyfriend or my husband, the same person.
Yeah.
We went in the spring of 1995. We had friends who Chip's friend from high school was getting married to a girl from WA. and the wedding was in Perth. And so we were doing a backpacking tour through Southeast Asia. And we decided we incorporated the wedding in Perth as part of our 6-month trip. And when I got to it was in Fremantle. When I got to Freo, I was like, this place is magical. I mean, it still remains after Nantucket, probably my number 2 spot on the globe. I love Fremantle so much. I could start to cry. I love it so much because I haven't been there since 2011. I love it so much. And I love the city of Perth, and I love the culture and the cafe culture and just the way you guys are so relaxed and like, I love the beaches, Cottesloe, like love. We were there for the wedding. And then we decided after we got married that we would go back. So we went for 5 years.
Wow.
We came for 6 to 8 weeks, and we rented a bungalow in
Freo?
In Freo. Yeah. And our friends have a house in Margaret River. So we would always take 2 or 3 weeks and go to Margaret River. So I've spent a lot of time in Australia. I've been to other parts. I've been to Ayers Rock. I've been to Sydney. I've been to Melbourne. I've been to Adelaide. I've been to Monkey Maya.
Yep.
And what's the place above? Now I'm like drawing a blank.
Were you going to say Exmouth? No.
I haven't been all the way to, well, maybe I haven't. Where's the place with the whale sharks? Is that Exmouth?
That right above. I should know that, especially at the moment because my husband lives far north.
It was out there.
Oh,
there's a place you go to.
Sorry.
It might have been Exmouth because we did not get all the way to Broome. Broome was like further away. So, Monkey Maya, Exmouth. My son swam with the whale sharks. I mean, we've done all that, but primarily our time has been in Perth and Freo.
It sounds like you've seen more of Australia than me. I mean, I've seen all the capital cities, and but I haven't been to Ayers Rock yet. So, I think I should say Uluru now. Whoops.
Uluru.
But we're happy to have you back anytime. Next year, we've got a big writing conference in Freo. So, you're welcome to come.
Okay.
So I'll take back to the beginning. I want to ask you kind of a broad question. Why do you write?
So, it's going to sound corny. It's just in my blood. I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was 7. My 2nd grade teacher gave us all an award at the end of our 2nd grade year. And my award was the top author award. I was 7 years old. And I think, I can't tell. I always say this because my 2nd grade teacher has since come to my events and she's been in the audience. And I said, I'm not sure if I showed enormous talent at age 7, or if you set me on a path by identifying something that I was enthusiastic about. And she made me believe that I could be a writer. And so I've always wanted to do it. My parents were very supportive. I always read, and I just always wanted to be a writer. And I'm so lucky that I knew what I wanted to do with my life.
I think it is something that's in your blood, isn't it? Often I would, aspiring writers sometimes say, I want to give up kind of thing. Because I had so many rejections. I say, do give up if you can, because I'm sure you'll agree, having listened to some of your talks and stuff before, it's not the easiest way to make a living by any means.
No.
But if you can't give up, then I think, it's what you're supposed to do. And teachers are so important, aren't they? Those teachers that just, take us on our paths. I got an award too, but it wasn't anything to do with writing. My year 7 teacher, who is also a special teacher and has come to one of my events, she gave everyone an award at the end of the year. And mine was the person who could make a little piece of chocolate last a long time.
That's very special, Rachel.
It's very specific.
Very specific.
Now, your very first novel, if I'm correct, was The Beach Club, which is actually one that I have got but haven't read yet. So I'm looking forward to getting to that. But I'd love to know, when you first published that book, everyone's got dreams of what can happen. And we know that there's so many different things that can happen when you publish a book. And, what were your hopes and dreams, the wildest dreams that you had for your books?
That book came out in the year 2000. So publishing was different. Yeah. And I was so excited to get it published. I got a very small advance. My advance was $5,000. And my agent, when I signed up with my agent, I need to go back a little bit. I did my graduate work at a place called the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, which in America is the best, for whatever reason, just the best writing place historically. Kurt Vonnegut went there, John Irving went there, all these Anne Patchett went there, all these famous people went there. and Elin. And it was very literary. Anyway, I found my agent because he came to my class and he had grown up summers on Nantucket. And so he was interested in me, and I wasn't finished. I said, I'm writing a novel called The Beach Club. It's about halfway done. Then when I finished it, I sent it to him and he was like, okay, I love this. I'm going to represent you. I'm going to make you lots of money. And I thought, oh, this is the greatest. And, you know, he sent my novel out to the publishers in New York and almost all of them rejected it. I had 12 rejections. And then one person came back with an offer of $5,000. And I said, is that, you know, you said you were going to make me a lot of money. Like, is $5,000 a lot of money? And he said, well, we don't have any other offers, so we're going to have to take this. So we took the $5,000 offer, and I knew it was going to be a smaller book. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew it wasn't like instant fame and fortune, but what happened with that book is that People magazine picked it up as their beach book of the week. And that was so exciting, but my publisher had only printed 2,500 copies. So they immediately ran out of copies. Now, Rachel, because it's 2000, there's no Kindle, there's no iPhone, you can't download it. Like you have to go to the bookstore and get it. And so it was really frustrating because people wanted the book, but couldn't get it. And then of course you forget about it.
Yeah.
I got a contract for 2 more books, and then I got a contract for 2 more after that. It wasn't until my novel Barefoot, which was my 6th novel, and I had switched
at the moment. Literally.
Oh, good. Yeah. I had switched publishers at that point. And, you know, in American publishing, you get to switch publishers once. I mean, you can switch publishers a bunch, but it almost never works out. That's like sort of like someone who gets married 4 or 5 times. And you're just like, it's just not going to work out. You get in publishing, you get a second chance. And I'm happy to say that when I switched publishers, I switched to Little Brown Hachette, and that's when the books took off, and they did such a careful, thoughtful job of building my brand.
That's amazing. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, the listeners on Rights for Women, I think, are predominantly women, but they do have predominantly writers, but there is readers obviously too. But I think what's really interesting for me, and I'm sure many other writers who listen to this podcast too, earlier in the stage of their career than you, is that, you know, I think people often think it is, you know, you're successful now, you know, but people think, oh, it's overnight success. Whereas the majority of people that are, you know, authors that I respect and admire, it's been a hard slog. And, you know, I'm sure there was times when you thought about maybe it was too hard, maybe you should give up, or...
I mean, there were a lot of tears for the first 5 books, there were a lot of tears. And I can tell you, I could sit here all day and tell you horror stories. I had babies. So the year that Nantucket Nights, which was my 2nd novel, the year that book came out, I had a 2.5-year-old and an infant. And they would send me on these tour is the wrong word. They would send me to events, but they wouldn't pay for anything. And at this point, you know, my husband and I were poor. We didn't have any money. So I would have to pay for like the rental car, and I had the babies. I couldn't pay for childcare. So I'd have the baby seat with me, and then I'd have to nurse the baby. And I was spending all this money, and then like 4 people would show up, and I'm like, okay, this stinks. Like, this is terrible. And I would call and I would cry, and I'd be like, can't you guys do any better? My first publisher just wasn't interested in growing me. That story gets really ironic, because then when I was ready to leave and go to the next publisher, they were actually the publisher that came in with the most money, 10 times what they had offered me initially. Yep. And I just wasn't interested at that point, because I was like, you had 5 books to prove yourself. But there were a lot of hard years, and just years where the book wasn't getting any attention. My books weren't getting any attention. And I mean, I guess the good thing was that the kids were little. And so I had something else that was completely occupying my time. So I couldn't obsess over my career the way I might have otherwise. Yeah. But there were definitely some hard years. I want to say one other thing. My books did not hit number 1. I did not get to number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list until my 23rd book.
Wow, 23rd. I knew it wasn't, in the first few, but that is amazing. Yeah. Which book was that?
It was the summer of 69. Oh, yeah. And the book that I had to beat to get to number 1 was Where the Crawdads Sing, which sat on the New York Times bestseller list for like 99 weeks. And I thought to myself, this is such an interesting juxtaposition in the week that my book came out, because here I am, and I've been doing this for, 20 years. And there's Delia Owens, and this is her first book. And she would be what you'd call, I think, an overnight success. Yeah. It didn't go straight to the top, but I mean, it was so dominant. And the movie's coming out, so it will be dominant again, but it was so dominant. And I thought, I can't beat her. And then I did, just for the 1 week, get the top spot. And it was so satisfying, because it was like a different approach to publishing, because I had been at it, building my career year by year, summer by summer, book by book for so long.
And you said, so that's the first time when you're up against her that you made it?
Yes, that was the first time.
That's amazing. And a sort of a segue into your readers, because obviously, I mean, that's the thing. I think when you build a brand, you grow your readers as you go. It's not like everyone knows because you're on Reese Witherspoon's book club, or you
right.
And you definitely have a really good fan base and a community of people. Obviously, I see you posting your events on Instagram, and you've got crowds and crowds there. And you're really generous to your readers. I really respect that. When I tell people that Elin is my favorite author, which you definitely are now, it's not just because I love your books. It's because I think there's a lot of things I respect about you. It's the way you treat your readers. I've seen that, you've turned up at people's weddings.
Gosh, I do it all the time. Yeah.
And the other thing is your discipline, but we'll get to that. But I want to talk about your readers and, how you think you sort of grew that. And, obviously it was them that got you to the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah. I would be nothing without them. And that is what I think, maybe, I don't know how other writers feel, but I would not be anything without my hardcore. And it's a two-way street, Rachel, because I feel determined to make every book as good as or better than the book before. And that is a trust that I have built with them. Like, I am not going to phone it in. I am not going to deliver a dud. You may not like the book because you don't like the topic. People had a really hard time with 28 Summers. Maybe we can talk about that later because of the adultery. And, I'm like, it's based on a famous movie. Never mind. Okay. So but that the book will be well written, and it will be interesting in some sense. Like, I'm not going to phone it in. So I work super duper hard on every book. That's the trust between us. And then the personal relationship with the readers is just something that has developed over time. I had breast cancer in 2014. And at that point, I was supposed to go on tour. It was this whole, I got cancer at the same time my book was coming out, and I had to announce that I was sick. I went on the national news.
Wow.
And I think at that point, my readers, and that was in 2014, that was 7 years ago. I think that's really when they solidified as a group and were like, you know what, we are here for you.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And that's when they saw me as a person. And then this coincides also with social media. So I do my own Instagram, and I call it my fourth child because I take so much time and attention.
So true.
But I put real stuff from my life. And during quarantine, like, I did tours of Nantucket and I did tours of St. John so that people can see the places. They know my children. It's important for me that they know that this is the life I'm living. And it's not all gorgeous and perfect. The setting is, but the things that happen are real. And I posted a sign before I went on tour that I had to leave for my children. And the sign was like, don't put knives in the dishwasher. I was terrified they were going to have a party. And I've just redone my house, and I'm like, my house is going to burn down. I was so concerned.
You should have locked them out and made them stay with other people. But I loved that note that you left to them. I remember, that and talking about, I think this is one of the reasons I respect you so much, because, I've got 3 kids too. And it is a discipline, which I've heard you talk about so many times, because, you have to make the time. But you also, I really love that, you are also obviously a very caring, generous mum who still makes them sandwiches and stuff when they're
all the time. Yeah.
And I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard, Rachel, as you know. How old are your kids?
13, 15 and 17. So
okay. So
yeah.
those are hard years. I'm not gonna
every
lie.
year. I mean,
Every year is hard.
Yeah, I thought, it'd get easier when they get older, but in some ways, the emotional thing is harder as they get older.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. But speaking back to your readers again, so I just wanted two things. Your Nantucket bucket list weekend. No, it's Elin Hilderbrand bucket list weekend, isn't it?
Elin Hilderbrand bucket list weekend, yeah.
That's right. And also the way you have, when you go to events, you specify a colour. I'd love to know how those two, and so readers, for anyone listening, Elin dresses in a specific colour for her each event, and then your readers come along too, don't they? So how did that come about? And then Elin Hilderbrand bucket list weekend. Tell us a bit about those things.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So the colours came about, I'm not sure. At some point, I'm very into my fashion, right? So I have all these dresses and I have all these clothes, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna, I wear a different dress to each event. And that sounds very spoiled and posh or whatever you guys say.
It doesn't,
but
because
it is so fun.
I was going to say,
I mean,
the rest of the time you're at home, aren't you, doing your stuff? And I know, as an author, I saw a meme the other day that said something like, authors have two sort of, fashion senses. One is we look like homeless person kind of thing. Right. And the other, you look like, you're going off to the Academy Awards, or not quite.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly right. So I get dressed up only if I'm going out. Only. And otherwise I do look like a homeless person. So at some point I thought it would be so fun if we matched. So, and this is why, two very big bonuses to matching. So I'll pick a color and I'll be like, this is the color I'm wearing. And then the ladies show up, and then while they're waiting in line, they have something in common. So everybody's wearing orange. Everyone's wearing tangerine orange. And they can, you stick out, right? So everybody's wearing the same color. They know that you're there for the Elin event. And it's like a bonding moment for them. And then aesthetically, when the pictures are taken, if you look at my Instagram today,
it looks good.
Last night we wore burgundy, and the pictures look fantastic because we're all in the same color. It just has a very aesthetically pleasing look. Instead of like everybody in whatever they're wearing, you look cohesive. So that's why I do the matching. And I encourage you, Rachel, you can totally borrow it and do it in Australia.
I was going to say I was going to steal it, and then I'm like, is that wrong?
No, I'm giving you full permission to do it in Australia. It is so much fun. And then moving on to the Elin Hilderbrand bucket list weekends. In 2014, I was approached by the owners of a hotel in Nantucket, and they said, would you consider having a fan weekend? And I was being treated for breast cancer actively at that point. And I said, yeah, no one's going to come. I said, oh, I can do it. We'll do it in January when the island's very quiet. Uh-huh. And it sold out in 4 days.
Wow. And how many people is that?
It was just 150 people, but it's 150 people. Yeah. And it's grown and grown. And then of course we couldn't do it in 2021 because of the pandemic. We did have it in January of 20. And I can remember it was during the weekend, because I was trying to book tickets to Thailand and on Air China. And they're like, okay, if you want to refund your tickets because of this virus. And I'm like, what? I don't know anything about this virus. I'm not worried about it. But anyway, we had it in 2020, and then we did not have it in 21. We are having it this coming January. And in fact, we had 3,400 people on the wait list.
Oh my
So we're doing 2 back-to-back with 200 people a piece. So yeah.
Just so amazing and so impressive. And I imagine, that's just something that people that come to that they'll be like one of the things that they talk about forever.
Oh yeah. I've had people who came the first weekend in 2014 who've come every single other year, and then they come with people that they met in year one. And that's really the magic of it. So the basis of the weekend is like, there are bus tours of Nantucket. We do a wine and cheese. We do a Friday night theme party. We do a Saturday night elegant dinner. We go to the Chicken Box, which is like the dive bar.
I know,
and it's so fun. And there's cooking classes with recipes from the books, and there's the shops in town do like sales, and they do discounts for Elin people. And we do all this Elin based stuff. But it's not, at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about these women and some men coming together, staying in this gorgeous hotel,
Yeah.
getting away, having, escaping essentially, and making friends and having this just girls' weekend. I mean,
Sounds amazing.
it's about that.
Is it the end in 2022, or you think you'll do it again?
I'm doing two this January, and then I'm going to do 2 in January of 2023 because my novel
name on that list.
Yes,
I might be allowed out of WA by then. I've already told
yes, that would be perfect. Just so you know, it can be cold and snowy. You might like that, actually.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm just loving this chat so much that I'm lost my train of thought. But I'd love to talk a little bit about your process and how you go about. As I said, I really respect. I've heard you talk about discipline before, and your running and your exercise. How you do, so which I myself try to exercise every morning and run, and I don't always manage because I'm not quite as disciplined as you. But I have to say, when I do, I have a much better writing day. So I'd really like to hear about your whole writing process and how that sort of fits into. Yeah.
Okay. So I've always been a runner, and since very early in college, since right after my freshman year, and I get up and I do it every single day. And it's really caused a lot of problems because I'm just like, I don't meet my friends for breakfast. Like, that is not a thing that I have done it. I think probably a handful of times in like the past 30 years. But I don't meet friends for breakfast. I don't meet friends for coffee. Like, I get up and I exercise. And now that the kids are older, the exercise has really taken on a life of its own. So, I do a 3-part, like in a perfect world, I do a 3-part exercise. I get on the Peloton, I go for a run, and then I do my bar class. Mm-hmm. And once that's done, I move on to the rest of my day and I feel great. And I'm always like, I do the hardest thing first, which is exercising. And then it's like a mind trick to make myself feel like, okay, now all I have to do is write. But then writing, I sit down and I work, and I don't keep myself to a word count. I don't keep myself to a page count. I just sit down and I work, and I have, realized some days are better than others. Some days you're going to get a lot done. Some days you're not. It doesn't matter. Yeah. If you write, I write every single day, or I do work every single day. And if you do work every single day, you will get a book written. You will. Yeah. And, I read. A perfect work day would be starting at 11. I have a pool out back. I go out back to my pool. I take the book I'm reading. I'm always reading. And a lot of times I'll start by reading, I'll take a nap, I'll swim, and then I will just get down to work, and I'll stop and I'll have lunch. And,
in a legal pad. Is that right?
I write in a legal pad. I try to take of like a 7-hour workday. I try to take 3 hours of actual composing. Mm-hmm. Then I'll take the legal pad. When I have 50 or 100 pages, I'll type it into the computer myself, because no one else can read my writing, but also it's the first edit when you're putting it into the computer. Then you print it out, then you mark it up. At this point in my year, it's November. I'm in Boston right now. I take an apartment in Boston for 6 weeks, and that's when I do my revising. Mm-hmm. And the revising, Rachel, is the most important part, because now I've spent 7 months with these characters. I've turned my novel into my editor. Yeah. She comes back to me with her comments and her changes, and then I set about making the changes. And at that point, it's moving the pieces around, right? And making them.
Well, maybe we should talk about The Hotel Nantucket, because that is the book that you're currently doing revisions on. And are you a plotter or pantser or somewhere? I mean, I think we're all on the spectrum somewhere. How would you identify?
I do not plot at all. So I just start. I start with like a handful of ideas. So like, I knew I wanted to have a staff at the hotel that was diverse and inclusive. Mm-hmm. And that's really, developed from in like 20 years. Like 20 years ago, I would not have been thinking diverse and inclusive. Yeah. I don't know what, but it's
I actually was going to talk, we're probably running out of time, but that was something I was curious, how your writing has changed because of things like that from.
Yeah. So I'm like very focused on having it be diverse and inclusive. So I was like, okay, this is my cast of characters. And then I knew I had certain ideas. Like I knew I wanted to have, I can't really say because I don't want to give away the plot points, but I knew I wanted to have people have certain conflicts. Yep. And, like there's a desk person who's being harassed by her ex-boyfriend. I can say that. The manager of the hotel is a woman. She's gone through a horrible breakup, devastating breakup. And so this is like her second act. And, she starts a romance with the chef at the bar at the hotel. And I can say that. And, you know, there's a guest who shows up on day one with her children and her pit bull, and no one knows where she's come from. And she's like, I want a room for the summer. And people are like, who is that? And she wants to pay in cash. People are like, who is this person?
So you didn't know who she was when you started? So
not really. I had a very different idea of who she was when she got there. And then as you're writing it, you're like, oh, this is who she is. Oh my gosh. And it's like the aha moment. Like, it's like, even to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I know who this is.
That's the best feeling, isn't it? You know, I think you'd have to trust the magic. And because I do believe there is an element of magic in writing when you write like that. I think you put things in and you don't really realize, you know, sometimes I think, why am I putting that there? That's pretty stupid. But if I leave it there, more often than not, there's a reason for it later. Like your subconscious knows more than you.
I 100% agree. I do. That is exactly how I feel. Like with the guest that checked in with her kids, initially I thought it was somebody else, like within the scheme of the book.
Yeah.
And then at some point I realized who it was. Like it was somebody else that I had set up within the framework. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's like this huge reveal at the end. And my editor and agents were like, we were totally shocked. And
that's so exciting.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I had no idea when I started. So I'm a pantser.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very similar to how I write. So I love hearing, you know, authors I admire say the same thing. And I hear there's a ghost in this one too. Is that right?
And there's a ghost, and the ghost really, I'm not really a ghost person, as you know, because you've read a lot of my books. I'm not really a ghost person. It's a very Elin ghost. It's my first ghost. Yeah.
Because I've written 3 ghosts, but so I'm very interested in ghosts, but I'm not sure I believe in them. So yeah, tell me about your ghosts.
Yeah. So it's just a very Elin. So there was a woman, a chambermaid that was killed in the hotel in a fire in 1922. She's still hanging around. She's pissed off. She wants her murder acknowledged, and she's not leaving the hotel until she has it acknowledged. The hotel has fallen, you know, into disrepair. She's been there by herself a lot. And so she is my omniscient narrator. So she's sort of floating around, like listening to other people.
Did that, like, when did you make, when did that come in the process? Did you always know you were going to have a ghost, or it just sort of, she turned up and she became?
She turned up, I think early, but not at the beginning, like early on, but not at the beginning. I thought, oh, I'm going to have this ghost appear.
Yeah. I find, sorry, are you going to say something else?
No, I was just going to say, I love an omniscient narrator now that I know how to do it, which literally is 27.
You do well with the Nantucket talking in your book.
Yeah.
Your island. Yeah.
Love it.
Which kind of brings me to one thing. Like I find, obviously I write similar to you, and I find it's absolutely thrilling when it's working because, you know, it all comes together, and it's exciting because basically you're reading a book like a reader. I mean, you're writing the book like a reader reads it, right? And so if you don't know what's going to happen, then maybe they, you know, won't as well. But when it's not going well, or you feel like, you know, you don't know what to do next, or, you know, it can be, to me, very terrifying way to write a book too. And so I wondered, you know, do you ever get stuck, and what do you do? And
yes.
Do you ever feel doubt after all these books?
Oh, yes. Oh, totally. So my plan originally was to retire with Golden Girl. That was going to be my last book. And in the summer of 20, in the middle of the pandemic, my publisher came to me and said, we'd like to do a new contract. And initially I was like, no. And then they threw a lot of money at it. And I thought, okay, I can do 2. They wanted a 4-book deal.
Yeah.
I said, I can do it. I can do 2 books. And they came back, you know, with even more money. And they were like, let's do 4. I did not want to do 4. So I said, I'll do 3. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt, Rachel, like I was selling my soul to the devil, because I didn't. And I thought, all right, I'll write the Hotel Nantucket. And then I have an idea, you know, another idea. But as I was writing the Hotel Nantucket, I felt the weight of the money on my back. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to live up to this. Like, I'm not going to be able to live up to this. It took me, I rewrote the first part of the Hotel Nantucket 4 or possibly 5 times with a different general manager. First, I had a man as the general manager, and then I had an older woman as the general manager. And finally, the third try was Lisbeth, you know, my young girl. Well, she's in her 30s.
I like that name.
Just had the breakup, and she is my general manager. But it took rewrite after rewrite, and during all of these rewrites, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah,
I'm not. I shouldn't have taken the money. I should have just retired, and I was very, very scared. Yeah. And it was very unnerving. And then at some point, once I got Lisbon in there and I started writing in the middle of some point in the middle of this last summer, July or August, the magic kicked in and I'm like, I love this book. This book is good. This book, it's come together. Like, this is going to be one of my best books.
As you
But
said, you've got to trust the magic.
Got to trust it. And it's so hard because there's no guarantee it's going to show up.
And I can imagine like the more money you're given, the more readers you have, buying your books, the pressure if people think it gets easier, but in some ways that's not the case at all, isn't it?
It is not. It is much harder because you have such expectations to meet and exceed.
And you don't, as you said, you don't want to let your readers down.
Absolutely.
I have to actually ask, I wasn't going to ask you about this because I've listened to a number of podcasts with you. And so I wasn't going to ask this because I know you get asked it a lot, but I've got an online book club. And one of my members asked, when I said I was interviewing you today, I said, did anyone got any questions? They did ask about they're a librarian in Victoria who loves your books. And she asked, is it true Elin's going to retire? So I know from having heard of you that you so yeah, do you want to say anything on that to people that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to retire with my 2024 book. It's so funny because just yesterday I had 2 really good ideas for a novel and I'm like, I texted my editor and I'm like, I might take another contract because I just had these 2 ideas. But what is going to happen is the business plan that I've been rolling with, which is a new Nantucket summer book every year, is coming to an end.
Yeah.
It's too much pressure. And so I'm going to stop. So I have a book coming, obviously the Hotel Nantucket comes out in June, and then I'll have 2 more Junes where summer Nantucket books will come out. And then I'm going to stop and I may write other books, but it's not going to be on the plan.
Yeah.
I may write a cookbook. I may take a year off. I may write a memoir. I may do other things, but I'm not going to continue the way I have been. So that will be like an actual hard out retirement. Not that I won't write another book, but that the way it's going
when you want to do it. I can understand there's probably readers that are disappointed, but as a writer, who's only been doing this 10 years, I can totally get you need that break. Leanne Moriarty, Australian author, of course everyone knows.
Sure.
I know she was going to have a year of joy and take a year off after her, not this book that just came out, but the one before. And it turned out apparently she found she couldn't do that, and she did start writing something, but it was on her terms.
Right.
She felt like it, not because she had that pressure. I'm real aware that we're, almost out of time, even though I could literally talk to you all your day and all my night. I could stay up all night. It wouldn't matter, even though I'm not really good at night usually. But you mentioned reading before, and I think that is really important to me as a writer, to read as much, if not more than I write sometimes. And I know a lot of authors will say that they, don't read at all while they're writing. For me, I'm always like, well, then I would never read, because and I think, you've had 2 books a year off it as well. And, so you'd probably be the same situation. So yeah, do you want to share, you obviously read while you're writing, and it helps your process. And do you want to talk about that? And then before we finish, just give us some recommendations of things you've been loving, maybe.
Absolutely. So I always read. I consider reading part of my job. And I always read. I read all the time. I'm always writing, so I'm always reading. I read 1 book at a time. I read novels by mostly female authors, contemporary fiction. I read stuff on the bestseller list. I try, Rachel, to read things that are very, very well written, because that is one way to make your writing better, is to write things. I write what in America are considered beach books, and it's not like the highest strata of literary fiction, but I do read.
I understand. I write rural romance, fiction, so.
I do read the highest. I read the highest strata of literary fiction. I read, I'm going to read Jonathan Franzen's new book.
Same.
I'm reading. I get a lot of ARCs. So I'm reading a novel now called The Caretakers, about American au pairs in Paris. The books that I've loved this past year, I loved Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, and I loved Olympus, this book called Olympus, Texas by Stacey Swan. So good. How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps the House, which was not a book.
That recommendation from you. It's still in my pile.
So it is so good.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the One-Armed Sister, which is why I did not want to read it. It's a murder mystery set in Barbados. It is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. So I always read books that are very, very well written. My favorite writer of all time, I have to say this, my favorite writer of all time is Tim Winton.
Oh yes, I've heard you say that.
Love him. If I were ever in a room with Tim Winton, I would probably faint. I consider him to be the highest. Like he's like right up there with Bruce Springsteen of celebrities that I couldn't even meet because I would start to cry. Tim Winton is a genius who lives among you in WA. And
we rarely see him. He's a creature that, only comes out occasionally, but yes, he's there, I believe.
But when I mentioned his name in the States, of course, nobody knows who he is. He's in the States, he's just not well known at all.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because our genres are so different.
Yeah.
But during my time in WA, I read The Riders, and then I read Cloud Street, which remains one of my 10 favorite books of all time.
I need to read that again because I read it in year 12 when I actually went through a period. I had to read it, and it was like, because it was school, it's on the school year 12, list. And so I need to read it properly again in a different stage of my life.
Brilliant. I read Dirt Music. I mean, those three are sort of like the holy trilogy, I think, of Tim Winton. I mean, they are so good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I won't keep you too much longer because I just wanted to say though, I did a literary degree, writing degree at uni too. And I was actually going to say, sounds like we had very different experiences and so I looked up your Iowa, right, because I was like, do they do any online stuff? But yeah, my degree was sadly not so inspiring, but that's okay.
It doesn't matter because you made it, Rachel.
Well, I wish I didn't do a writing degree in a way. I wish, that's why what it made me think about that is what you said about reading. I do really think, you can learn so much from reading other people's work and, enjoying it, but pouring it, analyzing it too. And two final very short questions. One, speaking of writing books and writing craft, are there any actual writing craft books that you would recommend to the listeners?
So I've never ever read a writing craft book, and I was at the University of Iowa. So like the things that you learn there are valuable. I mean, mostly it was the discipline, but also just like, the technique. This is my number one rule for aspiring writers. You have to dramatize, by which I mean, you have to write scenes, and the scenes have to have dialogue and people in a situation. Mm-hmm. Dramatize. Don't tell us about it. Show us what happens. Like that is the number one thing. So like in any one of my books, you can go to the scene where, like Mallory, like in 28 Summers, she's at the beach with her baby under the umbrella, and this guy's dog comes up and startles her awake. And then it's sort of like a meet cute. And then they start dating. Right. And then but it has to be a scene like that where people are interacting. And obviously in the Hotel Nantucket, like it's scene after scene after scene. And like the one woman who's working on the front desk, a girl from her past comes walking in the door, and then she's like, having a major freak out. So, but you have to dramatize. So that's my number one writing rule. Must be done.
That's good. And I'm glad you said that, because otherwise Pamela would have told me off, because at the end of these sessions, you are supposed to ask you what's your top tips for writing. But I've just been, having a conversation with what I'm really doing. So thank you so much for your time. My final question is, how the hell do I get an early copy of the Hotel Nantucket?
Okay, so you're gonna just DM me and put your address in. It takes forever, but I will.
I'm so cheeky, aren't I?
I'm gonna write it on my phone, and I will send you an autographed. I will send you an autographed copy. Thank you, Rachel, because this was so much fun for me, and to all of my Australian readers or potential readers. I mean, I absolutely love where you live, and I hope to be back.
I hope you're back too. And this has been one of my favorite chats ever. I could have talked all night. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Elin. I'm sure everyone listening will get a real thrill out of it.
Awesome. Bye, love. Thank you.